Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome back once again to the We Are Marshall podcast. My name is Stephen Marshall, and this is my co-host, Bill McIntyre. As we always state, we're just two guys discussing the issues of the day, laying out the facts of those issues, and then giving you our view on those issues and our opinion of those issues. Okay, we'd really like it if you would share our podcast all over social media as we have. We are currently on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Truth Social, and we do have a channel on Rumble, like YouTube. Rumble is like YouTube. It's a free application to download, and it basically holds videos like our podcast, just like YouTube would. So go to Rumble, download the free application, go look for the We Are Marshall podcast, and subscribe and follow. That way you'll get notified of all of our content and things that Bill and I are doing. You can also go check out our website at wearemarshallpodcast.com. That's got tons of links to books that I've published, like this one, my first novel, The Unforeseen Enemy. And I did just release another novel that will be available in the next couple of days called The Perception Therapist. They can all be purchased on Amazon in ebook and paperback form at this time. They will be transferred over to audiobook soon as well. Also, you can go on Amazon, and there's actually an area called Vella. And Vella is like an episodic writing thing that Bill is doing now. He's got a few episodes up there. Go check him out. He'd love your support. You know, give him some ideas on what you think of his writing, and you can reach him to do so at bill@wearemarshallpodcast.com. And you can reach myself if you have any questions or issues also at steve@wearemarshallpodcast.com. We'd also love you to support our sponsors like they support us, and we have two at this time. Local Prints New Hampshire out of Hampstead, New Hampshire. They can handle full-service screen printing duties, so go give them a call. Look them up. That's Local Prints in New Hampshire. And also go check out our large sponsor, which is MateConnector.com, a large dating website with all the bells and whistles of the players in the market, but they have it for a much more insignificant price than those players. So with all that being stated, we are going to jump right into the information we have today, and we will do shameless plugs of our stuff all throughout the podcast.
You left out my blog, but, that's okay.
Well, go check Bill's blogs also on the We Are Marshall podcast. There is a link. You just click and you can go read all of his blog episodes.
I can be shameless too.
Why not? Go for it. But anyway, the first topic, Bill, today that I'd like to discuss is here are all these states that are trying to hold Trump off the ballot for president. Well, the Supreme Court seems to be poised to reject efforts to kick Trump off the ballot over the Capitol riot. So the Supreme Court seems poised to reject attempts to kick former President Donald Trump off the 2024 ballot, with conservative and liberal justices in apparent agreement in a case that puts them at the heart of a presidential election. A definitive ruling for Trump, the leading Republican candidate for president, would largely end efforts in Colorado, Maine, and elsewhere to prevent his name from appearing on the ballot. The justices could act quickly, possibly by Super Tuesday on March 5th, when Colorado, Maine, and 13 other states will hold primaries. Conservative and liberal justices alike questioned during arguments Thursday whether Trump can be disqualified from being president again because of his efforts to undo his loss in the 2020 election to Democrat Joe Biden, ending with the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Their main concern was whether Congress must act before states can invoke a constitutional provision that was adopted after the Civil War to prevent former office holders who engaged in insurrection from holding office again. There also were questions about whether the president is covered by the provision. In the first ruling of its kind, Colorado Supreme Court decided that the provision, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, could be applied to Trump, who the court found incited the Capitol attack. But on a Supreme Court that prefers to avoid cases in which it is the final arbiter of a political dispute, the justices appeared to be searching for a consensus ruling, and the issue of congressional action seemed to draw the most support. Justice Elena Kagan was among several justices who wanted to know why a single state should decide who gets to be president of the United States. In my opinion, an incredibly valid point. 8 of the 9
And
justices,
surprising, giving her liberal lean also.
but you got to give her the
Yeah.
credit. She was fair.
Yeah.
So 8 of the 9 justices suggested they were open to at least some of the arguments made by Jonathan Mitchell, Trump's lawyer at the Supreme Court. Trump could win his case if the court finds just one of those arguments persuasive. Justice Sonia Sotomayor sounded most skeptical of Mitchell's arguments, though she too might not vote to uphold the Colorado ruling that found that Trump engaged in insurrection and is ineligible to be president. And another sign of trouble for the Colorado voters who sued to remove Trump from the ballot, the justices spent little time talking about whether Trump actually engaged in insurrection following the 2020 election. Lawyer Jason Murray, representing the voters, pressed the point that Trump incited the Capitol attack to prevent the peaceful handover of power for the first time in history. Mitchell argued that the Capitol riot was not an insurrection, and, even if it was, Trump did not directly participate. Trump, speaking to reporters after the proceedings, called the Supreme Court argument a beautiful thing to watch in many respects, even as he complained about the case being brought in the first place. I hope that democracy in this country will continue, he told reporters at his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida. AP journalists are covering this historic case inside the courtroom and out. Now, Trump could be back before the Supreme Court in a matter of days to seek an emergency order to keep his election subversion trial on hold so he can appeal lower court rulings that he is not immune from criminal charges. That issue had a brief airing Thursday when Justice Brett Kavanaugh said a more legally sound approach to disqualifying someone from office is found in a federal criminal statute against insurrection. Someone prosecuted for insurrection, if convicted, could be or shall be disqualified from office, Kavanaugh said. Mitchell agreed, but with a caveat: Trump's claim of immunity. So we would not concede that he can be prosecuted for what he did on January 6th, Mitchell said. The exchange was largely hypothetical because while Trump faces criminal charges related to January 6th, he has not been charged under the insurrection statute. Justices heard more than 2 hours of history-laden arguments in their first case considering Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Chief Justice John Roberts worried that a ruling against Trump would prompt efforts to disqualify other candidates, and surely some of those will succeed. Trump's lawyers argue that the amendment can't be used to keep Trump off the ballot for several reasons. For one thing, they contend the January 6th riot wasn't an insurrection. And even if it was, Trump did not go to the Capitol or join the rioters. The wording of the amendment also excludes the presidency and candidates running for presidency, they say. Even if they are wrong about all of that, they argue that Congress must pass legislation to reinvigorate Section 3. Sotomayor, at one point, gently mocked part of Mitchell's argument for why Trump is not covered by Section 3. A bit of a gerrymandered rule, isn't it, designed to benefit only your client, Sotomayor said. The lawyers for Republican and independent voters who sued to remove Trump's name from the Colorado ballot counted that there is ample evidence that the events of January 6 constituted an insurrection and that Trump incited it. They say it would be absurd to apply Section 3 to everything but the presidency, or that Trump is somehow exempt. And the provision needs no enabling legislation, they argue. But Murray faced sustained, difficult questioning across the high court bench, including from Justice Neil Gorsuch and Kagan, two justices for whom Murray once worked as a clerk. If the court, in the end, upholds the Colorado decision, it would amount to a stunning declaration that Trump did engage in insurrection and is barred by the 14th Amendment from holding office again. That would allow states to keep him off the ballot and imperil his campaign. The justices could opt for a less conclusive outcome, but with the knowledge that the issue could return to them perhaps after the general election in November and in the midst of a full-blown constitutional crisis. Trump is separately appealing to state court a ruling by Maine's Democratic Secretary of State, Shenna Bellows, that was ineligible to appear on that state's ballot over his role in the Capitol attack. Both the Colorado Supreme Court and the Maine Secretary of State's rulings are on hold until the appeals play out. The issues may be novel, but Trump is no stranger to the justices. 3 of whom Trump appointed when he was president. They have considered many Trump-related cases in recent years, declining to embrace his claims of fraud in the 2020 election and refusing to shield tax records from Congress and prosecutors in New York. In addition to the immunity issue, the court also will hear an appeal in April for one of more than 1,200 people charged in the Capitol riot. The case could upend a charge prosecutors have brought against more than 300 people, including Trump. The court last played so central a role in presidential politics in its 5-4 decision that effectively ended the disputed 2000 election in favor of George W. Bush. Justice Clarence is the only member of the court who also took part in Bush v. Gore. Thomas has ignored calls by some Democratic lawmakers to step aside from the case because his wife, Ginny, supported Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election results and attended the rally that preceded the storming of the Capitol by Trump supporters. Now, the reason I did this story is it really lays out everything going on with Trump, but it clearly shows something that I am seeing, which is election interference. If we all recall in the news when James Comey, prior to his press conference about Hillary Clinton, what he said is, I don't want to bring this forth right now because if I do, it'll be election meddling. Okay? So our FBI director at that time admitted that pursuing a political person is election meddling. Yet here we go with Trump and a slew of election meddling through the court. What do you say, Bill?
That's a lot of information, Steve. Yeah, 91 counts. That doesn't have anything to do with election meddling at all. No,
Not at all, right? Yeah.
Well, I guess that I'm glad you mentioned that because it takes me to my overall point. Okay, Americans who put these people in office. Okay, we don't elect the Supreme Court justice, but we elected the politicians that confirm them or reject them. The American people deserve better. Okay, the American people do not need to be told who they can or cannot have on a ballot. They will vote for who they want to vote for. Okay, and I think it's the American people, if they don't see that it's the party in power, at least in the presidency, using the bully pulpit to discourage or block a candidate they simply don't like. And the reality is they're terrified of him. And I'd challenge anybody to argue with me on that one. It's insulting that the government is actually arguing with itself, our government, instead of taking care of an important business. You know, the American voter is a trust toward picking who wins the election. Bottom line.
But here's a good thing. I don't know. You know how you and I pay attention to Dan Bongino? We watch him.
Sure.
He had something on there, I believe it was today, and a Democrat came right out. If you didn't watch it, you should, or listen to it. And he basically said, as Democrats, he said, we're a bunch of son of a bitches. We will take this to the hilt. We don't give a shit, and they'll do anything they can to win.
There's something noble about the honesty of that statement, I guess.
Well, I guess it's bitter noble.
Yeah, but it's truthful, which is something that we don't get often from that side of the aisle. But I mean, like I said, my biggest thing here is that I think it's disgusting that people aren't more outraged by the fact that we have a party that's trying to eliminate someone they don't like. And if people don't recognize that for what it is, it's them being scared, then really shame on them. It just further enforces that the American voter is highly uninformed.
Yep, you literally, I couldn't have said that better. You nailed that perfectly. They just don't know. They don't get it. All they hear is Trump, 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 bad, 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 orange man, bad, and that's it. They don't want to look at the ramifications of what happens with this and what precedents it's going to set down the road.
It takes too long to put the phone down from taking selfies, Steve, and actually take that index card size piece of plastic in your pocket that can give you access to all the information in the entire world by hitting the send button. It's unbelievable. I mean, how dare we ask people to do that? I remember the day to trudge into the library and dropping a shitload of dimes on copies when I wanted to research something, and I never imagined the day when I have something like this and just okay, well, there's the truth, or actually do some critical thinking and try to arrive at the truth. Okay, so let's go back in the time machine. 1948, Strom Thurmond ran for president. Would
Yep.
the Supreme Court have said, no, you're a segregationist. No, you can't run for office. What about 1988? David Duke. Remember him?
Woodrow Wilson.
Well, David Duke's a Klan member.
Woodrow Wilson is one of the most racist presidents we ever had.
LBJ, yep, another one.
What about Senator Byrd? Senator Byrd.
Byrd, yeah. Well, I was going to try to keep that segment brief, but yeah, the list does grow, doesn't it? I did think of Byrd, but David Duke was unapologetically the head of the KKK, and he ran for office. Well, guess what? The people decided we don't want a Klan member as president, and he didn't get very far in the primaries. This is supposed to be a free choice, and then again, I'm a little confused on why the Supreme Court's discussing insurrection, because Trump has not been accused of insurrection.
Right.
They've said it, but no one's actually levied a charge against him that says that he incited an insurrection, which would be the basis for a 14th Amendment rejection of his candidacy. Okay.
Yeah, but that's not what they're if you listen, they're trying to use other things like the insurrection. You're right. He has not been charged with insurrection.
Well, no, I freely admit that I'm not as confident in my understanding of that aspect of this case.
Yep.
Okay, that's why I want you to fill me in and tell me if I got it or not. But I do know enough to stand by my statement, elementarily, and say that, you're talking about debating the what ifs of something that hasn't even happened yet. They put a guy in jail for this supposed insurrection that wasn't even there, a promise keeper. All right. And then you've got Donald Trump, who wasn't there, who there are accounts that are supposedly whitewashed by the media where he called for people to stand down and not act violently, just make their voices heard. So that's not me defending Donald Trump. That's me looking for the truth somewhere in the middle here, But you just have to remember the Supreme Court, which we're talking about here, should rely on precedent, factuality, and constitutional interpretation. And anything about that, my friend, is conjecture and opinion.
I agree, but they will, as you can see, they are leaning in his direction because they do see, like I said in there, like Mitchell pointed out, if they do this to Trump, you're going to see people sue to disqualify candidates they don't like going forward. And that's
it's a dangerous precedent.
Not a good way to go, but good information.
And if Kagan and Sotomayor think it's a bad idea, and they're two of the most liberal members of the court, I think this has a good chance. I really do.
Yep, and that will wake up the rest of the country that, you may not like someone, you can't take them off the ballot. Just don't vote for them then. That's all you have to do. It's that easy.
Doesn't that sound so simple?
Yeah, but here we are. That's the first issue here at the We Are Marshall podcast. Please go check out our website at wearemarshallpodcast.com. All the content there. And now we're going to let Bill take over his segment here. Next issue. Go right ahead, my friend.
All right. Well, let's talk about Russia. Okay, and let's talk about Alexei Navalny, who is a Russian dissident because he was a staunch opponent of the old KGB throwback ways of Vladimir Putin, and he was instead a more progressive guy who wanted to bring reform to Russia. Probably a bit of a reincarnation of our good friend Gorbachev, but. That being said, he's been a person that was a guy who's been in prison for many years in one of the brutal prison camps under the guise of the corrective colony, they call it, in the village of Karp in the Russian Arctic. The Russian prisons are notoriously harsh, and he's been relegated to that prison for many years after Putin had him arrested.
30 years.
Yeah, Putin couldn't do much with him. He couldn't do his usual execution because the Russian law won't allow him to do anything to someone of that magnitude to someone unless they commit a series of events that would justify it. So by only being an opponent of his, he simply just threw him in jail and hope he would rot. The premise was always going to be that he was going to be killed in prison. But this happened probably sooner than anybody thought. But the real issue here is nobody's terribly surprised. Okay. So he was in charge. He was in jail for a 19-year sentence. The Russian government announced on the 16th of February that the death of Alexei Navalny, without offering many details, that's a surprise, But here's what we know about Mr. Navalny's fate and what happens next. And after I discuss that, I'm going to discuss a little bit of history of Putin and how he handles his enemies.
Well, just for the record, you do know Navalny, this is his second time being poisoned by Putin.
Yes.
And he was poisoned by a drug called Novichok. And he actually called the government at one point when he was while he was under the poison of Novichok. And they told him what they did to it. I guess they put it in his underwear. And they wanted it somehow to get into a glass through his underwear. I don't understand, so that he'd drink it, and he was poisoned with that. And they believe that's what they just did again. But continue. Go get more into it.
Sure. Well, in announcing the death, the Russian prison service said that he had suddenly felt unwell during a walk. And the medical workers who had arrived to attend him in an ambulance had performed all the required resuscitation procedures without success. A doctor working near Mr. Navalny's prison above the Arctic Circle told the independent Russian news outlet Media Zona that the closest ambulance team is 22 miles from the prison. By the time it would have arrived, a patient in severe distress would already be dead. So who were they resuscitating, he added. So President Biden said in a White House appearance that we don't know exactly what happened, but there's no doubt that the death of Navalny was the consequence of something that Putin and his thugs did. The Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, resorted to the government's usual legalese in commenting on Mr. Navalny's death without offering additional details. He said on Friday the prison service is carrying out all the checks and procedures in accordance with all the existing rules, and adding that the cause of death is being determined. Some media outlets went further, saying that he died from a blood clot, without even providing the source of that assertion. These claims cannot be independently verified, but a former mid-ranking Russian prison official said they should be treated with caution. Anna Karenina, who oversaw pre-trial detention centers in the Moscow region, said in her experience blood clotting was a common shorthand for lethal cases that prison authorities had no intention of investigating. Okay. So the team, as of Friday, has said that the lawyer was flying to the prison to establish facts. We have yet to hear about anything on that. All right. So I found a nice piece of Newsweek today. It's an opinion piece, but it was pretty factual because I took the time to verify a lot of the information. And it said that the opinion piece, that Navalny's murder clarifies the Putin problem. So it's a pretty informative and succinctly drawn up article that points out the extent and history of Russian political assassination. So in theory, it's nothing new that Russian President Putin has assassinated his peskiest opposition rival Alexei Navalny. On the opinion pages, we do not need to pretend that he was imprisoned for convictions. These are all quotation fingers by a court of certain charges. Navalny's murder was one of many, but it may be pivotal nonetheless. The timing of his death in the Arctic Circle penal colony is laden with significance because it's almost a 2-year mark of Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and a month before the latest fake presidential election. Now, this guy's bold, but it is a fake election because Putin has geared it so he can't be opposed and he can't lose. And he's not subject to term limits because he found a way around that, in which he made himself, he installed a puppet president, which removed him as president, but still default leader of Russia. And then when that person's term expires, he goes back to being president of Russia again. Right. He's got it all figured out. And he's going to do this until he pretty much can be in power until he dies. So the symbolic timing seems right because he himself was a symbol. Navalny was a symbol. He was so obviously the ultimate anti-Putin. He was a charismatic crowd pleaser to Putin's sinister misanthrope, a transparent liberal and modernist, while Putin is a lying, shadowy 20th century issue KGB retread. I couldn't say it better myself. Navalny was a globalist, and he's also half Ukrainian. Okay, so Putin is a souped-up national disruptor who invaded Ukraine. Again, strong language, but somewhere in there lies the truth. And then, of course, presenting-wise, Navalny was a tall, young, and presentable guy, where Putin is pretty much a very awkward, mummified type of a person. And he says makes Tucker Carlson look dashing by comparison. Interesting. So mainly Navalny was courageous, insanely courageous, because he went to Russia, returned from Ukraine in 21 after barely surviving a poisoning attempt that you mentioned, knowing his life was in danger. He was not scared of Putin, but Putin is scared of a free election and cowers in the Kremlin with his food taster. Navalny was arrested immediately upon his return to Moscow, met by authorities at the airport or when he landed. So the dispatching of his 47-year-old rival is not surprising for Putin. It's certainly a ramping up. The last serious rival, billionaire energy tycoon Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who dared establish an opposition political movement, was jailed from 2003 to 2013 on trumped-up charges, then released. At least he was released. The 60-year-old is the politer regime critic now, in exile. But Navalny was unfazed by his arrest, and he ordered his team to release a documentary they had created called Putin's Palace, which he wrote and narrated, accusing Putin of fabulous corruption and spending more than $1 billion American dollars of the Russian people's money to build an opulent imperial retreat, which, of course, Putin denies. The charges against Navalny were typical in that they were brazenly absurd. Breaking parole while being in a German hospital was what they charged him with, where he was recovering from being poisoned from Novichok, as Steve mentioned. Had he died due to the poison, one wonders if they would even charged him posthumously with breaking parole. Like that. Yeah. Navalny simply met the same fate as many others who ran afoul of Vladimir Putin. Last year, Yevgeny Prigozhin, remember, if it was the guy who led the rebellion, Prigozhin, excuse me, he tried to leave a short-lived rebellion, and that didn't work. But we also, this is important, these are the previous people that have met such a fate. We have Pavel Antov, the sausage tycoon, who fell to his death, again, quotation fingers, from a hotel window in India. Ravil Maganov, who criticized the Ukraine war and then apparently fell from a hospital window in Moscow. And, there's a lot of falling going on there. But this apparent killing spree surprised no one, since Putin has become synonymous with lethal political assassinations. So building on a tradition that goes back all the way back to Rasputin, has been added since the 2006 killings of a critical journalist, Anna Politkovskaya, murdered in an elevator in 2006, and rogue spy Alexander Litvinenko, who was poisoned with polonium, which is usually their choice of poison. So Putin has been widely believed to falsify the elections, and he's taken over much of the media to aid him, a trick borrowed from other countries. And as we know, as I said earlier, he learned to out-trick the trickery of term limits. So I think we can't forget also that before 2022, he seized Crimea from his neighbor, and he's been accused of a role in shooting down the Malaysian air passenger jet, which is still unsolved. And they also even mentioned that he's been guilty of trying to poison elections here, but I think that one's a little controversial. But here we are. Do we want to intervene? Sure, we should. But have we the right? Now, this is where the opinion piece goes a little off the rail. But he said, imagine foreigners boycotting America because a reinstalled Donald Trump was messing with its democracy. That's an interesting comparison. But reactions have come all from all over the world. Most countries in the world state they believe he was outright murdered. Very few people have given Putin anything that resembles a benefit of the doubt, and that Russia should face consequences. Now, the rest of the world is talking about sanctioning Russia, who's already under a significant amount of sanctions for their role in the Ukraine war. Well, the United States, though, what's Jumping Joe's technique going to be here? Well, in June of 2021, he had warned, already knowing that what this guy was about. He warned of devastating consequences for Russia if Navalny dies in prison. Yep. Well, here we are.
Yeah,
and those devastating consequences look like more sanctions. He'll know more by the end of the week at what they're going to do. So that's the story in as much of a nutshell as I can put it in. It's very, very predictable. It's very, very believable. And I think the guy is about as untouchable as any leader of any country can possibly be.
Well, I agree 100%. My final point was exactly what you finished with, which was very good, Bill.
Sorry about that.
That's good. I want you to get your thought out. And that's basically Joe Biden threatened Putin that if something happened to Navalny, like you said, there would be dire consequences. Yep. What could dire consequences be? And where are the political people around Biden to say, whoa, dude, you can't say that? Because the minute you say that, you've literally just committed political suicide. Because if you do just lay sanctions like you're saying, let's be honest, Bill. What have them sanctions done to this day?
I think it's made him stronger, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't see him I mean, I see him. You've got all these sanctions. He started a war. He don't give a shit. And This is where, we got to do something. I thought The Hague was going to try him as a war criminal, but I don't see anything happening. It's ridiculous. No. Something's got to be done. They don't
dare because he's not going to respond to any kind of international tribunal, nor is he going to allow any foreign forces to enter Russia, never mind the presidential palace, and take him.
Well, I got that, but if he leaves that country for 1 minute, they will grab him and put him right in jail, which I'd love to see. He could go hang out with Slobodan Milosevic somewhere or whatever. But
they'd get along well, wouldn't they?
They would. Yep. Good story. The guy is a KGB old school leader. He believes in assassinating other leaders of state, people to get his way. He's the old thought process back in, say, World War I of how people thought about taking over certain areas, countries, and still have an imperialistic mind on him. He does. And I don't see that out of anybody else but his buddy over there in Asia, China. That's it.
He's got his buddy in Belarus who's a little scary, but he's not much without Putin's support. And the other thing about this is that we can't forget that Putin has the ultimate goal of establishing the former Soviet Union.
Exactly. Yep. So pay attention,
that's
everyone.
A big problem.
Yep, pay attention. We'll see what's going on there. I'm sure Putin drama will continue, and we'll see. It's going to be a big thing. If Biden's still in office for the next 4 years after that, you're going to see Putin and Xi, who's China. These guys are going to do all kinds of things that they would never have done. So just be ready and be prepared. But here at the We Are Marshall podcast, we've got 2 issues down. We've still got lots of news to cover. If you have any issues about the information or you want to discuss it with Bill or I, you can reach me, Steve, at wearemarshallpodcast.com. And you can reach Bill at wearemarshallpodcast.com. And also check out our website at www.wearemarshallpodcast.com. And you can check out Bill's blog, Bill's Veller on Amazon. You can check out my book that I published, The Unforeseen Enemy, and you can check out a number of things that we are doing on that webpage. But do go to Rumble and follow and subscribe to our channel so you do get notification of all of the content we're doing. But now on to the 3rd issue of the day. And the reason I do this one, this is a little older, but the reason I do it, because what I want you folks out there to see is the hypocrisy. And this was the best way to show it, because when you put Trump up against Hillary, they did go against each other. But when you put them together, you see that Hillary did things that Trump did, and she had nothing happen to her. And you see Trump did things that Hillary did, and he got the book thrown at him. It's just showing that they go after the Republicans, but the Democrats, for some reason, have free reign in this world. But the issue today is why the FBI let Hillary Clinton off the hook. Now, in a highly unusual public statement Tuesday morning, and this is before Tuesday, FBI Director James Comey said Hillary Clinton and her aides may have violated the law in using a private email server when she was Secretary of State. No, she did violate the law, and Comey's saying the word may to protect her, and when he says that he didn't, he's full of shit.
It's in the employee handbook, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, but that their actions didn't warrant criminal charges. In its year-long investigation of how government secrets got into the server, Comey said the FBI found, and I quote, evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information. Okay, let's be real, my friends out there.
Sounds familiar.
What are 2 major cases going on right now? One, Biden with classified information gets off because he's a nice old senile gentleman. And Trump does the same thing. But I am going to be fair on this. Trump did obstruct and do things, but they're not even weighed the same way, which is kind of terrible. No. And then Hillary, here we have Hillary storing classified information on a server at her own house. Okay, so even though the handling classified information, he did say, we are expressing to the Justice Department our view that no charges are appropriate in this case. In the American system, justice depends not only on judges and juries, Comey said, but also on the decisions of investigators and prosecutors, meaning they can pick and choose whatever they want, even if the law states differently. Law enforcement officials weigh a number of factors before bringing charges, he said. And to make those decisions responsibly, they must consider the context of a person's actions and how similar situations have been handled in the past. What a load of shit that last line is. The context of a person's actions and how similar situations have been handled in the past. Whatever. Anyway, normally those calls are made behind the scenes, but Comey said because the case had received intense public interest, he had decided to lay out why Clinton's actions didn't justify prosecution. Comey brings nonpartisan credibility to that decision. Bullshit. As described in a Time profile last March, he investigated Bill and Hillary Clinton in high-profile controversies over the years, including the failed Arkansas real estate deal known as Whitewater. Bill Clinton's last-minute presidential pardons in January 2001, and now the email investigation. As George W. Bush's deputy attorney general from 2003 to 2005, Comey also bucked Vice President Dick Cheney and his allies over warrantless eavesdropping and the leak of CIA officer Valerie Plame's identity. From the start of the Clinton email case last summer, Comey instructed his agents to pursue the investigation independently. Told Time in March, Comey put 20 to 30 agents on the case full-time, and they collected and read tens of thousands of emails and forensically analyzed multiple servers and mobile devices used to send and receive messages. They also conducted dozens of interviews, including with Clinton and her closest aides. Over the course of the investigation, the agents found thousands of emails that contained information that should have been treated as government secrets. Let's say that again. They found information that should have been treated as government secrets, and nothing happens to her. Ridiculous. Comey said Tuesday, including 8 messages that had top secret information in them. All those messages had been sent or received through unsecure, unclassified channels on Clinton's private email network. And while agents found no direct evidence that the network was hacked, the FBI thinks it is possible some hostile actors may have done so. And as Comey said in his interview, the server that she had was less secure than Gmail. That combination of facts led Comey to declare Tuesday that Clinton and her aides had been extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. Technically speaking, that conclusion could have put Clinton in legal jeopardy. But let me read that sentence again. Technically speaking, that conclusion, and I'm going to change the word to should have put Hillary Clinton in legal jeopardy. Not could, it should have. The laws regarding handling of classified information do not authorize punishing government officials for carelessness, but they are written so broadly they came close. One section of the Espionage Act, for example, says anyone authorized to handle secrets who, through gross negligence, which is what she did, permits the same to be removed from its proper place of custody, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. Other laws controlling government secrets are similarly broad, especially with regard to top secret material. In practice, however, law enforcement officials have set a high bar for prosecuting violations of those laws. Tell Donald Trump that. Looking for clear criminal intent, which Comey said was absent in the Clinton case, because the government is awash in secrets, they are regularly mishandled unintentionally. In 2013, according to the National Archives, which tracks classification, executive branch agencies created more than 77 million documents with secrets in them, including 46,800 with newly created secrets. The FBI receives dozens of referrals of leaked classified information every year, according to Justice Department declarations to Congress. Prosecutors have also been wary of testing whether broad prosecutions under the espionage laws would hold up in court, especially in cases of news organizations pursuing secret or top secret information for publication. In the Clinton probe, investigators found that at least some of the classified information referred to was contained in a newspaper article that aides then forwarded to Clinton. To be sure, the Justice Department has been aggressive in prosecuting leaks in some cases, especially under President Obama. But Clinton's mishandling of secrets did not clear the bar for prosecution, Comey said Tuesday, when compared to other cases that have been taken to court. In looking back at our investigations into mishandling or removal of classified information, we cannot find a case that would support bringing criminal charges on these facts, Comey said. Normally, that's a judgment made in private to avoid damaging the reputation of someone investigators aren't prepared to prosecute. Back in 2002, when he was the top U.S. prosecutor in Manhattan investigating Bill Clinton's 11th hour pardons, Comey declined to go public with his findings. How ironic is that? He declined to go public. I mean, is he not protecting the Clintons? Is it not clear? And he says, I can't really go into it because it was an investigation that didn't result in charges, Comey said at the time. That may be a frustrating answer, but that's the one I'm compelled to give. On Tuesday, Comey said he was breaking with that tradition because the American people deserve details of the investigation in a case of intense public interest. Comey's statement Tuesday appeared to anger both parties. Republicans, including the GOP presumptive presidential nominee Donald Trump and House Speaker Paul Ryan, criticized Comey for deciding not to recommend charges. Clinton surrogates criticized him for choosing to publicly discuss the matter at all, which to me, and what Comey said, was election interference. Yet here he is running there they are running Trump all through this rigmarole and effectively meddling in the coming up election. So it remains to be seen whether either decision will shield the FBI from allegations. It has been politicized 4 months before the November election. So in my opinion, Comey said right in his statement what he did. Basically, the prosecutors and the investigators, even if they have a smoking gun, can still say, we don't want to do it. And they had a smoking gun. They had a server off property that isn't supposed to be in someone's home, funneling top secret information through it, which, as I said earlier, Comey stated that it was less secure than Google's Gmail. So you're going to prosecute Donald Trump. I understand the obstruction of it, okay? But I don't get anything else. If you want to get Donald Trump on obstruction of trying to hold on to the documents, fine. But all of them should have been charged, Biden and Hillary, all together. What do you think, Bill?
You know, I could go on and I'm not going on. But I mean, I could come up with a lengthy response, but there's no need here. This is such a blatant case of this political favoritism from an institution that is supposed to be non-political, and which just kills me. And I know that the liberals love when someone like me uses the buzzwords weaponizing of the justice system. But Jesus Christ, what else is it? Okay, you have a situation in which an elected official of an institution that's supposed to be an extension of the justice system, which has a very memorable symbol, which is a blindfolded lady holding a scale, as in to give you the obvious understanding that justice is blind. And it's Clarence Thomas, topic of our last podcast. It's colorblind. It's blind to all influences other than the truth. Okay, and there's no search for the truth here. There's search for ways to cover up and just simply refuse to do the job they're supposed to do without any. And this is my biggest point: without any accountability of any kind. Okay, yep. And shame on the people who allow this, because I know we just can't call for an impeachment of an FBI director. No, Comey obviously isn't an FBI director anymore, but you can't call James Ray and say, as an American taxpayer, I demand you step down. He's going to go, F off, peasant. But the fact is that this is something that shouldn't happen. These agencies were created to give, to uphold laws and not favor someone because they happen to be the party with the most. Well, maybe he didn't want to get suicided by Hillary. I don't know. If I'm going to watch the conservative line, I might as well do it right. He didn't want to get suicided. But I mean, it's embarrassing, though. It really is to think that in a country that at least pretends still to be a country of values and an ironclad legal system, that people can just falsely manipulate and lie about what they're doing. They're protecting a person who was probably more guilty than they could ever even allege Donald Trump to be. I mean, this woman, she scrubbed what, 35,000 emails, was it?
Yeah, and then again, you don't do that unless something is on those emails. Why
Right.
would you have to scrub them?
Was it bleach bit they called it? The system.
Like that, I believe
Yeah,
it's called.
yeah. You made the point to wipe out your entire hard drive. An innocent person would have taken the laptop and go, "Here you go."
Yeah, hand it right over.
Jesus. I mean, I don't have any more to say, Steve. This is just further illustrating the complete and total bias. And I hope that if should it's not to happen again and we have a Republican president and it's a Democrat they're chasing, I hope they don't resort to these tactics. Sadly, I think they will.
Honestly,
if you ever hear me say that Republicans are any better than Democrats, you're not going to hear me say that.
They need to do these tactics, dude. The only way they're going to stop the Democrats from utilizing is to use them against them, and then they'll see the president they set, and maybe it'll stop. Because honestly, Bill, I am sick of the Republican Party saying I'm going to take the moral high road. The Democrats don't care about morals. Enough. Win. That's all I have to say. We need the balance in the country.
I mean,
win.
Unfortunately, we have to put decorum aside, and to people who, and this is going to sound, a little controversial, but the people who want to take this country back, which is basically every Donald Trump fan, what they mean by taking it back is it's drain the swamp. It's get rid of the people who manipulate, lie, and deceive and get away with it. But the thing is, they better not pass a law because we know that no FBI director is going to follow it. So,
well, they're still going to try to pass them. But anyway, good subjects. We're going to keep moving on. We got a lot more to cover. We got three more issues to roll by. And the next one we're going to hand over to Bill. He's got Donald Trump's penchant for praising dictators. Go for it, Bill.
That sums it up nicely, Steve. Thank you. It all starts with Nikki Haley. As we know, the South Carolina primary is coming up, and it's Nikki Haley's home state. And she's in full-blown panic mode. We could talk a lot about Nikki Haley. It's kind of a sore subject for me because I actually like Miss Haley quite a bit. But even I have acknowledged that the Republican Party has embraced Donald Trump so heavily and so universally that she needs to step down. And I really hate to say that. But her supporters are urging her to stay in the race. Okay.
Well, you do understand why she should stay in the race, though, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I just think it's a long shot. But she's going to keep things honest and she's going to keep things real. And I admire her tenacity. I guess the fact is it doesn't seem like anybody believes she has, a snowball's chance in hell. But then again, no one thought that about Donald Trump in 2015 either. So
what if Trump gets prosecuted on anything? She's in.
Of course, and she'll be called out of retirement if that happens.
That's why she's hanging in there, though, so she can get as many delegates as possible. But
but she's trying to close the 30-plus point gap difference between them. Trump is just destroying her. 5 points, maybe. That could be within the margin of error. But she's got a 30-point deficit going to South Carolina. So I wouldn't say she's desperate, but she definitely has the gloves off even on a cold day, okay? And she is looking for ways to punch out at Donald Trump the best she can. Well, unfortunately, the death of the Russian dissident gave her a good opportunity to do so because Trump did what I was hoping he wouldn't do. He stayed quiet on the death of Navalny, and he didn't make a statement of any kind. And people are watching for this because Trump is notoriously known to be a fan of Putin and notoriously very supportive, even praising dictators, as many as 9 different dictators, despots, bad actors around the entire world, during his presidency and post his presidency. So even when Trump did finally come out and say something, he didn't even mention Putin's name. So Haley's having a field day with this, okay? And she's bringing up a subject that I think needs to be brought up because this election is happening. And Donald Trump is the likely presumptive nominee for president for the Republican Party. And he does have a problem with demagogues, okay? He does. One of the things about him I've always hated, I understand it to a degree, but I hate it. So out there, we have right now, Miss Haley is attacking her opponent for his comments about NATO. This is how it started. The former president, and we talked about this the other day, Steve. Excuse me. Donald Trump made an offer.
I feel he should be condemned for those statements.
That's why I mentioned him. The former president made an off-color remark at a rally on 10 February in which he again stirred fears about the future of NATO by suggesting that those who don't pay their fair share or come to the aid of European nations if they're attacked by Russia might even encourage Russians to do whatever the hell they want, end quote. Seeming to invite Russia to attack any NATO member state, says Haley, deemed to be making insufficient contributions to its own national defense. When you hear Donald Trump saying in South Carolina a week ago that he would encourage Putin to invade our allies if they weren't pulling their weight, that's bone-chilling because all he did in that one moment was empower Putin. True, said Miss Haley. All he did in that moment was he sided with a guy that kills his political opponents. He sided with a thug that arrests American journalists and holds them hostage. So she's going for the jugular here, but she's not wrong. Okay.
Nope.
Those comments she argued. Do you think she is, Steve? Or?
No, I do not think she's wrong at all. No.
Yeah. So those comments, she argued, were part of the favoritism that Mr. Trump has shown Vladimir Putin and the Russian government throughout his political career. After Russian agents were found to have worked against his political opponent Hillary during the 2016 presidential election, Mr. Trump would go on to declare at a joint press conference with Putin that he accepted Russia's explanation of his supposed innocence, despite the collusions of the U.S. intelligence community. So Nikki Haley contended in the interview that the pro-Russian sentiment her opponent exhibits was playing into his lack of acknowledgement of the death on Friday of Alexei Navalny, Mr. Putin's leading opposition figure in a Russian prison. Quote, it's actually pretty amazing that he would encourage Putin to invade NATO, but the fact that he won't acknowledge anything with Navalny, either he sides with Putin and thinks it's cool that he killed one of his political opponents, or he just doesn't think it's a big deal. And that, unfortunately, when you hear what I have to offer here, that part about that it's not a big deal seems to be a little more consistent than I would have thought before I looked into this subject. On a side note, Stephen King, who you probably don't even care about this part of it, but Stephen King also came out and criticized President Trump this week. He called and said that Vladimir Putin's running dog. He posted this comment on Monday just after Trump finally spoke out about the death of Navalny. But he didn't mention Putin. And let's face it, Stephen King he's just uttering the liberal mantra that Russia, which we heard for so many times. I never want to go through that again. I don't. But finally on Monday, Donald Trump did acknowledge it. Like I said, but he said Russian President Vladimir Putin's most significant opponent had made him, meaning Trump, more aware of his own political rivals and court cases. So he did not mention Vladimir Putin at all, except by mentioning him as the president. And he made it all about him. He said in a post on his Truth Social platform that Navalny's sudden death in a Russian prison, which he didn't mention Putin again, but he did not blame or even mention him. Instead, he said he attacked the radical left politicians, prosecutors, and judge in the United States. And he also appeared to refer to last week's civil court judgment against him, more than $450 million. The sudden death of Alexei Navalny has made me more and more aware of what is happening in our country, Trump said in the post. So he linked Navalny's death to U.S. politics and then drew immediate criticism from Republican and Democratic opponents who have long alleged he's afraid to say anything negative about Putin. It's kind of disgraceful that he did that, because what he's really doing was he was trying to make people feel bad for his plight and all his legal battle that's going on. And you don't want to make things about you when they're not about you. And he should know that. But, Steve, I think that proves that he hasn't learned much in the 3 years.
Most of them are narcissists at that level. I don't think they can even gravitate to empathetic anything. But his point, the only point in his thing that I may agree with is he said that it's part of the American political system. Well, when you have a dictator like a Putin and you're challenged by a weak president like Joe Biden, that could be where he said, you know something? This dude threatened me. I'm going to kill this guy in jail, and I'm going to see what this little bitch does. And that's how he looks at Joe Biden.
It does, but I don't think that's something that Trump should be should be using as a tool. I think it's a little bit too confrontational, and he needs to show people that he's not necessarily a kind of gentle, but maybe a less boisterous and I don't know, a slightly more cognizant person of how the impact of what he says.
Are you
things.
asking Donald Trump to learn tact?
No, but I would think that after his last term, and all the people that offered criticism, including his staff of advisors for starters, which he just routinely played off and said, what do you know? Because they're not agreeing with him. That he would have learned a little more tact. Yes, I am saying that.
Well, he does not have tact. He's not going to learn tact, but he will be more astute as what goes on in Washington if he does get there, and that's why they're afraid of him. But good stuff, Phil. Let's.
Actually, Stephen, I'm only half done. I'm sorry.
Half?
If you know. Well, I just want to give a little more background of Trump's love affair with dictators. That's part of the story. Yeah. I'll be brief. So he has a troublesome relationship with this. Okay, he's for a long time he's displayed an odd affection for Vladimir Putin as well as other despots, crackpots, and dictators. Now with Russia in the news again, he's been called to the carpet for his silence. So again, it's called into question his penchant for dictators and strongmen. And the little article on Washington Examiner from 2018 talked about this. And it said one of the resistance's favorite conspiracy theories that Donald Trump is so warm to Russian President Vladimir Putin because Putin has compromise or evidence, if you will, which is the Russian dossier or the P-tape, which is a stupid thing, but this is where they started with it. So this is a far simpler explanation, though, for Trump's nice words and fond feelings towards Putin. He likes and admires dictatorial strongmen. And I think there's something that needs to be discussed here, okay? Trump showed that oppressor love again Wednesday, this is in 2018, when he was asked about North Korea's Kim Jong-un, who runs his country as a concentration camp, murders his rivals, and regularly threatens peaceful countries with nuclear war. Brett Baer asked Trump, isn't he a killer who conducts political executions? Trump says, yeah, but so have a lot of other people done some really bad things, which is basically defending North Korea. He regularly praises Putin as a strong leader, has great control over his country. He's praised the tactics of Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, who had an unbelievable amount of killings on his record. And even when Trump made decent points about U.S. foreign intervention, such as pointing out regime change wars in Libya and Iraq were mistakes, he does it in odd terms, saying we would be so much better off if we had Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi in charge of Iraq and Libya. Wow. This praise of brutal leaders who do not necessarily care about how they exercise control of their country reflects other things we know about Trump. He has the dog park mindset. Shows of strength earn respect from him. Shows of weakness earn derision. So recall that his criticism of Justin Trudeau is how meek he was. So he's a derivative of Justin Trudeau for that reason. And recall how Trump won the GOP debates by acting like an overbearing, blustering bore. He would talk over other candidates, not to say anything, usually has something to say, but establish that he was indeed the one speaking and the others did not have the right to speak. It was his stage. And then a real quick thing, in 2020 piece in the HuffPost, this is 2020, it said, in the newly released audio recordings from an interview, former President Trump admitted he preferred world leaders the tougher and meaner they are. I like Putin. Our relationship should be a very good one. I campaigned on getting along with Russia, China, and everyone else, he told Bob Woodward. Getting along with Russia is a good thing, not a bad thing, especially because they have 1,332 nuclear fucking warheads. That's a quote. So it's funny, the relationship.
Do you see what he's doing? See, people got to look through the politicizing of Trump and what he does. Okay? I think that he said the wrong thing about NATO. I do. But what he's trying to do is not be a negative force against these leaders so that they will kind of, come close to him. He's bringing the phrase, mine enemy's enemy is my friend. Okay? Right. He's doing something like that. I think Trump realizes, and we can go look at his presidency to show it, that China's the major threat in the world. It's not Russia. It's not, and how do you weaken China? You let them not have friends like Russia, like North Korea, and like Iran. So how do you do that? You try to pull them close to you. And I think that's kind of what he's doing with Putin. I think people don't like the tact, and I don't think people realize what he's really doing.
Well, I want to thank you for saying that. Is actually what I was going to close with, but you probably said it better than I was going to, because I know that you were going to say that there's a flip side to it, because we always look at the flip side of it.
Yep.
And the flip side is, yes, okay, it's better to get along with your enemies than not to get along with them.
Exactly.
It's better to give them a false sense of security and pull them in and
especially when they have real world consequences.
Right. And using the enemy of my enemy is my friend mentality is exactly what he's doing. So that's the only thing I was going to mention that, Steve, because that's what this article is about. But people who don't recognize that, they probably have a right to be troubled by how much he does seem to glorify what we would call, brutal dictators. So,
well, I think I think it's not the glorification of the brutality. I think it's the glorification of a conversation you and I had, which I also said I was going to write a book on now, that my next novel that I'm going to write. And that's the fact of, remember the example of your family and my family. He feels that the way I laid the example for you, the audience may not know, but just to clarify you, that if he utilized how I'm saying that family, things run better.
Right.
And we've had the discussion, and in a way, he's not wrong on that level.
No, he's not. But what he's doing, though, is he's basically saying that he wishes he had more power to exert what he feels is the right thing to do to make the country the way he wants it to be. He doesn't want to have little things like Congress in his way.
Well, agreed. I understand that. But good segment.
And that's all. Thank you.
We got a lot. There was a lot in there. I really want you just run right through your next segment that I like. So let's get it done, because a lot of people probably don't know about this. And this was a big thing when we were a lot younger.
Yeah. Yep. This is a local story, local meaning New England, even though Rhode Island is not technically what we call New England. It's close enough. It's next to Massachusetts, which is New England. And in 2003, a terrible tragedy occurred in which the Station Nightclub in Rhode Island had a rock concert. It was a very popular nightclub in West Warwick, Rhode Island. They had a band called Great White, which was an 80s hair band that was, of course, in the tail end of their career at this point, 2003. And they were doing a show, and they had pyrotechnics. And sadly, the pyrotechnics it just ignited a massive fire that spread so far and so fast inside that people were unable to get out, and over 100 people died. What can only be imagined to be an absolute, just horrifying death. Now, I worked in an area of Massachusetts which was on the Rhode Island border, and I actually had the misfortune of being at work and hearing about this incident. And I actually knew a couple people that had lost someone, and they got the news on their phones that morning that they lost a friend or two in this fire. It was a really big story. Of course, it was a massive legal battle that ensued, and Great White, their notoriety is no longer for their music, which is kind of a sad thing. But
how many people passed away in that?
100.
Awful.
But 400 people total in the venue. It was also revealed that they were way over fire codes for attendance, and they were way under on sprinklers and everything else. So I don't have to go on except to say, imagine, your loved ones going out for a night and saying, "Hey, I'm going to go to a show." Well, anybody who ever heard this story would probably have just a twinge of fear and unease when they hear the words, "I'm going to a club," because this was, like I said, to imagine being burned alive. Listen, I don't think any way other than maybe, die under a pilot, Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. They can't be, that is not the way someone should go. That is just a tragic ending.
Well, if I was under a pile of Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, I'd be,
Yeah.
I'd be cheering with them.
No, that was a good way to go. Everything else is bad. This was the worst.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying. But that story was awful. I remember it from my youth very well, and it was crazy. This is when a lot of regulations came around fire codes and a lot of buildings and stuff like that. It just blows my mind, though, that there were no windows, no other ways out of there. It's just crazy, and I think that should be something thought of to protect your patrons, because when you are in a closed area, it can be really scared. I was at University of Michigan game one time, and it's at the stadium. It had 115,000 people in it, Bill. And
Wow.
what they do is they have these rolling storms in Michigan that are lightning and thunder, and they're very bad. So
Yeah.
right before the game started, they started to get a lightning storm. Believe it or not, they had to clear out 115,000 people really quick from the stadium because of that, because in the college, the benches are metal. And it
Right.
just amazed me how orderly, quickly they got 115,000 people out of there and then back in, and the game went on. It was amazing. At the
Yeah,
time,
they had a system in place, clearly.
yep.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was against Central Michigan, so it was the largest attended stadium game for football in the whole country at the time. It was pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
but good stuff. People should learn, and watch your back when you're in these buildings, because you never know. Make sure you look for the exits. Make sure your
Always
friends
look
are
for the
safe with
exits.
you.
Yep.
But make sure that make sure every way you can be as safe as possible. But we're at the end of the podcast, and I found a really cool human interest story that I think is amazing, and I want to share it with you today here at the We Are Marshall podcast. So what it is when a preschool was opened inside a dementia care home, all heaven broke loose. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Centered on that concept of communal flourishing, Northwest England's first intergenerational care village, home to both older people and young children living and learning together, recently celebrated its official opening. Stimulation, learning, fun, these are activities that are known to delay the progression of dementia. And what better way to add these critical elements of life to a daily regimen than to let a flock of preschoolers do it? Belong is a not-for-profit care operator, specializing in dementia care. They have care villages in England's Northwest and West Midlands regions. Now marking the latest dementia-friendly development, Belong welcomed the Lord Mayor of Cheshire, Sheila Little, to declare the latest village in the county officially open. The pioneering facility on City Road supports older people to live their lives independently. The national charity Ready Generations partnered with Belong to run the village's integrated day nursery. The nursery children feature in the daily life of residents and tenants, enjoying experiences together including shared mealtimes, stories, arts and crafts, and exercise, and to meet staff and residents, said Lord Mayor Sheila Little. This is a particularly exciting and innovative development, as it includes a nursery, which benefits both the children who attend and the residents who visit to play and read to them. I look forward to visiting again to see how the village is growing and developing. Breaking the mold of more traditional care environments, the $24.5 million state-of-the-art village incorporates 6 family-sized 24-hour care households, 23 independent living apartments, as well as the children's nursery. Centered around a vibrant hub of amenities, including a bistro, hair salon, and specialist exercise studio, the site is open to the public, creating a bustling environment for customers and the local community. Belong Chester is the 8th village in the dementia specialist group, and it's 4th in Cheshire County, with its other sites in the Cheshire municipalities of Crewe, McClassfeld, and Warrington. Similar projects have been pioneered in America as well. The Intergenerational Learning Center at Mount St. Vincent Nursing Home in Seattle opened its doors to the oldest and the youngest in 2015. The 400 adults in the assisted living center join the kids in daily activities, from music and dancing to storytelling and just plain visiting. A filmmaker named Evan Briggs launched a Kickstarter page to finish a documentary about the center called Present Perfect, which portrays what he calls the very real experience of aging in America, both growing up and growing old. What a dichotomy to bring the young and old together, to exercise the minds of those that are suffering from dementia or to prevent it. I mean, this is pretty ingenuitive to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see where this goes. Knowing this, I want to really look into the Seattle one that opened in 2015, because we now have a 9-year history of what's transpired there. So I think it would be really cool for me to follow up this story with what's really going on in that, because
Well,
this is
definitely.
the best thing. There's nothing better than trying to help our children and our elderly. And if we found a way like this, let's continue it and continue to find new and innovative ways to help both our old and our young. What do you think, my friend?
Well, I think it's a very novel concept, and I think that the possibilities are endless. I mean, especially for the people who may be at the beginning stages of dementia, mental stimulation. I mean, I
That's
know
the
that the Alzheimer's is a calcification of the brain, which is necessarily falls into the category of the brain being a muscle and exercise it. But it's a proven fact that people who are stimulated or make an effort to stimulate themselves mentally by reading, playing games, and what's the first thing they do when they tell you that that you have early onset dementia, stuff like that? They tell you to play games, puzzles, things like that to generate mental activity. Now, I know for a fact that if I ever acknowledge that I'm actually truly retired, the temptation to watch TV would kick in. Not that I would fall to it, but that's the beginning of death. That's what people don't want to retire for. They don't want to stop being busy. They want to be out there and feeling like their mind is fertile and active and all that. So that's just one beautiful aspect of this story. I think that you can go further and say that the kids who may not be interacting with elderly people out of choice or out of fear or just not understanding. And let's face it, they don't understand old people, so they probably avoid them. I think we've all been guilty of that when we were kids. An appreciation for the elderly might come out of this also, which I've always advocated for, because I love old people. I always have, even though I am one.
well, who holds the most wisdom on the planet?
Well, people who've been there, elderly people.
Now they're going to hand it down to our youth with this. This is a really good thing. I think more is going to come out of this than just the help of dementia. It's going to be
I want to see a study. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying it's going to be fascinating. Go ahead, your study.
I want to see a study about any improvements on people who may have been diagnosed with dementia or early onset Alzheimer's or something like that, who having spent a significant amount of time with energetic young people,
Well, that's why I want to go look into this intergenerational learning.
Empirical data would be great on this.
Yep, and then maybe we could show that if we make it exposed to it, maybe they'll start growing more. Who knows? And that would be great to see. But good podcast once again. I hope you folks learn stuff like we do every single time going over this. If you have any issues or questions, or you just want to talk about anything that we do on our podcast, you can reach Bill at wearemarshallpodcast.com, and you can reach myself, Steve, at wearemarshallpodcast.com. We also have a chat window on our webpage that you can go utilize, and it'll come right to my email, and I can chat out with you if you want. And we're going to eventually, when we go live, we'll start offering chat out there during a live session of the show. We love that you would, if we'd love it here at the We Are Marshall podcast, like I stated initially, if you would go to all of our social media and like and share our podcast episodes all over your social media. You can find us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Locals, X, Truth Social, and of course, our channel, which is populated on Rumble. You can go download the Rumble application for free. It is just like YouTube, but they do not censor you. So go check it out, download the application, and go to the We Are Marshall podcast to check out all of our episodes from this season and last season. Also on the webpage, you can check out things like exciting stuff we're doing now. I got a book out there on Amazon you can buy, The Unforeseen Enemy. I just released The Perception Therapist on there. You can also go check out Bill's Vela episodes on Amazon. And on our webpage, he also has his blogs. Go check out his blogs and see what's going on our website. But do subscribe to our website and our Rumble channel, and you'll get notification of all our new content coming out and everything that we're doing here at the We Are Marshall podcast. We'd also love for you to please support our sponsors as they support us to provide this information and this great experience to you. You can go look at Local Prints New Hampshire out of Hampstead, New Hampshire, a full-service screen printing business. They can handle all your needs, whether it be domestically or internationally. Go check them out. Give them a call in Hampstead and see what they can do for you. We'd love for you to support them as well. And do check out our large sponsor, MateConnected.com, a large dating website out there with all the bells and whistles of the big players in the dating market, but for a much less inexpensive price. That's the end of the podcast today. We loved you coming out. We can't wait to see you probably tomorrow. And everybody have a good evening. Good stuff, Bill. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thank you, sir.